Forgot to like delete shit off the memory card, which is the point of dumping.
Oh well, hopefully it's fine. We'll find out.
Yep.
Welcome back to yet another video. I'm sure you're really tired of us at this point because I'm tired of us. So in this video, we're gonna be doing something a little different. We thought it would be fun to recommend books to each other just because it's a little more interactive. Normally one person describes a book and then the other just stands here like yeah, like our minds are bleeding or whatever. And you know, we just wanted to show you what good amigos, buddies we are by like recommending books to the other person to show how well we know each other.
I can't wait to recommend all these amazing books that you are never going to read.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Okay, so for you, I thought that a book featuring an interesting female character that wasn't very ham-fisted, strong, independent woman cliche that we tend to get a little tired of in YA and adult fantasy. Like basically any book we read, we both tend to get a little bit exhausted by the strong female character that's very flawless and badass and very little room for character development because she starts off so strong and it just kind of remains very consistent throughout.
That's a whole rant. Let us know if you want to hear it.
So because of that and your taste for fantasy and good character development, I thought that you would really like The Pop You Are by R.F. Kuang. This is one of my personal favorites. This is a book that is heavily inspired by Chinese mythology. So it's this girl, in order to escape being forced into a marriage she doesn't want, she applies to this extremely competitive military academy, and against all odds, she actually gets in. Once she's in, she realizes that she's completely out of her element because all the people in this military academy are very privileged and leagues ahead of where she is, and she really has to fight for a place in this academy and earn the respects of her peers. It sounds very standard YA, like everything that we kind of have a problem with, but I assure you, it's not like that. I also have to say R.F. Kuang does a really good job at how intense studying can be. It was really relatable. It was just really interesting seeing this main character start from the bottom and actually having to really work her way up and having to constantly push herself. And she does have a lot of ups and downs. She doesn't always believe in herself, and there are a lot of moments where she has to remind herself about why she deserves to be in this academy as much as everyone else. But it's cool too because there is magic and it's I like it, so I think you will like it.
Yeah, no, I definitely appreciate the elements of her being in this like elite school type situation, and especially doubting yourself. I feel like even though it's a fantasy novel, it's like completely relevant to most people, especially if you're in college. I'm gonna read it. I promise I will read it. See, the thing is, I've recommended so many books to Sam, and the good friend she is, she goes and reads all of them. On the other hand, she's like, Trisha, you have to read this, you have to read this. And I'm like, yes, I'm going to read it. But then I just get tunnel vision on my bookshelf. And so then I like forget about the ones Sam recommends to me. I don't read them, and it's really sad because they're all really good books.
On that note though, like you paid me a really nice compliment. Thank you.
I'm nice. Okay, I'm never gonna do it again, so. The book I'm going to recommend to you, Sam, you probably already know what it is, but it's one of my all-time favorites. I love it so much. I know you're gonna read Name of the Wind, so I think this is gonna be such a good book to read after Name of the Wind. That book is The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. I just feel like this is such a staple fantasy novel. Like, it's up there with Way of Kings, Name of the Wind. You seem to like gravitate towards like a lot of like political intrigue. Let me tell you, this book has a lot of political intrigue.
Oh,
okay? It's just impossible not to love all of the characters in this. Scott Lynch does such a good job of building them up. I care deeply to everything that happened to these characters. I feel like that's really hard to find for me in a lot of novels, especially YA. It is also kind of refreshing to take a break from the YA, and they swear every 5 seconds. It follows a thief named Locke Lamora. It kind of jumps around in his lifetime from when he is raised in an orphanage underneath a graveyard to the time he's taken in by this fake priest guy and lives in a church. He basically teaches them all their thief skills, become the best of friends in such a sweet friendship.
Is it kind of like Six of Crows in the sense where it's like a cast of like all interesting characters
it is.
who come together?
Okay. It is. Like, Lockamora is like the Kaz of this equation. Basically, like, you know, they're trying to get money from this political big guy, and everything goes wrong and blows up in their faces, and soon they have the most powerful men in the city of Camor at their throats. The world building in this book is so good. The world is this kind of fantasy-esque Venice. This is probably one of the most like vivid fantasy worlds that I've read. I think the world building in this is honestly better than Name of the Wind.
Wow.
That's how good it is. The last 200 pages are such a wild ride. I was laughing, I was crying, I was gasping. There was not an emotion that was not felt while I was reading this book. So please read it.
I promise.
I love it.
This next book that I'm recommending to you might be a little hit or miss. I don't know, with you, you're so weird. Her taste in general is very, very hit or miss.
Yeah.
'Cause her taste consists of nothing but exceptions to things that she normally hates.
Yeah, it's true. It's really true.
Yeah, I'll recommend something and I'll be like, oh, like Trisha likes this, and I'll be like, no, I didn't like this, and or I'll be like, oh, I think Trisha would hate this, and you turn out to like it. But I'm bringing it up because I know you're not a huge fairy tale fan. It's Bear the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. This young girl named Vasya is born into this Russian village who can see these household spirits in Russian mythology when no one else can. And she has to be very careful because she will be branded as a witch in the eyes of the villagers, or her very religious stepmother will drive her out. She also has to come to the terms with the fact that being a woman in this time period, she has very, very limited options. For her, it's either, you know, get married and become a submissive wife, or go to a convent and never be heard from again. It's a really sweet, very interesting coming of age tale. I don't think you need to worry about the fairy tale aspects in here. It's very, very descriptive, and the aesthetic, I think, is something you would really appreciate.
The world just doesn't want us to film today because honestly some of our best material ever has been lost.
We truly are losers. Anyway, it's honestly like way more brutal than I think you might guess from this book and its description, but Catherine Arden takes a lot of inspiration from real superstition. A lot of like really interesting historical stuff happens. Like it works really well as a historical fiction, which I know like you tend to like as well. She really does change a lot through these 3 books. She is not the same person by the end of the series as the start, and I know you also like good character development. This is really, really excellent character development.
I think it'll be a good read that hopefully I will read soon.
Yeah.
So my next book that I want to recommend to you is another one that I've definitely told you to read on multiple occasions. That book is The False Prince by Jennifer Nielsen. It's not super heavy, it's an easy read. It follows a young boy named Sage who is plucked off the street by this noble guy who is basically kidnapping orphans, and he is trying to turn one of them into the next prince. It has a really great cast of characters. It's really interesting to see the dynamic between the boys. They are forced to compete against each other. In normal circumstances, they would have been friends. It's a very interesting back and forth dynamic of how they treat each other. The main character is just so much fun. He's super funny, super enjoyable, really chill.
So I didn't know that this was a middle grade. I thought it was a YA, but it sounds interesting. It sounds like it's fast-paced and easy to read. The book equivalent of a fun popcorn movie.
Yeah, it is. It is that. It's very fast-paced. Yeah, it's definitely middle grade. It was published by Scholastic, and it's nice to pick up a middle grade once in a while.
Yes.
It's very also just like nostalgic of the books I used to read like back when I was a kid. So like it just reminds you of a good old time.
The last book that I'm going to recommend to you is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. I have been recommending this book to her for so long because it's really good. This is a science fiction book, and I actually think that Red Rising is a really good science fiction book to read for people who don't really like science fiction, or people who aren't used to reading science fiction but they want a good introduction to it. This is a really good book. It kind of surprisingly does have elements of fantasy in here, like just no spoilers, but a sneak preview, like griffins exist in this world.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's kind of a typical revolution book mixed in with space opera elements. This is the part where people tend to compare it to the Hunger Games, but don't fall for it. It's not like the Hunger Games. People are split into different color coordinated factions. So you have like the Reds, who are the lowest class. They're kind of like, they do all the slave labor. And then you have the Golds, who are like the top tier, like the ruling class, the politicians and the warriors.
Also, don't mistake for Red Queen.
Yeah, no. Pierce Brown did it first. This world is interesting because it's based on Roman/Greek empires and the way that they run their political system. It's all very savage and it's very barbaric, very backstabby, and everyone's out for themselves. And the main character is chosen to disguise himself as a Gold and infiltrate it from the inside so that they can rise in the revolution. I really think you would like this one because the world building is very, very well fleshed out, and there are no typical sci-fi tropes in here. Like, there aren't any robots, there aren't any aliens. The world doesn't really extend outside of our own solar system. We tend to talk about this thing where, especially in YA, if a character does something, they sometimes don't really go through realistic consequences, which can be a little annoying because, you know, it's real life. And this book is something that definitely like follows up on the consequences of a person's action. You're gonna laugh and cry and be shook. It's a roller coaster ride for sure. And also, I did mention laughing. Pierce Brown is really good at writing humor, and it kind of breaks up the bleakness of some of the book. I think out of all these books that I've recommended so far, I recommend this one the most.
Okay.
Because yeah, it's
Alright.
it's a ride.
Alrighty. The last book I'm going to recommend to you is something that I'm hoping will get you out a bit of your comfort zone, because you read a lot of fantasy,
Yep.
and you know, there's some other good books out there. That book is Devil in the White City by Erik Larson. So this book follows two perspectives. One is Daniel Burnham's. He's the architect who built the 1893 Chicago World's Fair. And the other is notorious serial killer H.H. Holmes. I really love that Erik Larson decided to split it into these two perspectives, because there's something you don't really think relate to each other. They both contributed heavily to the way Chicago was built and the way Chicago is today. Yeah, I also just love this book because I'm from Chicago, and a lot of Daniel Burnham's buildings are still around the city. If you've been to the financial district, he has a beautiful building there, so I recommend check it out if you're ever in Chicago. Also, if you like serial killers, this is a good book because H.H. Holmes is pretty out there as far as serial killers go. He went as far as to build an entire, what is now called like his murder castle. It was like insane. He literally had like different workers come in and like would build some of it. He would fire them, hire a whole new batch of workers, and then fire them, so no one knew the exact layout of this like crazy place. And he sold it as like hotel rooms, but he would be able to like gas people from inside their hotel rooms.
What?
Like there would be like pipes and stuff leading into their rooms. You have a dark side to you, so I think you'll definitely like appreciate that aspect.
Yeah, sold, honestly.
Yeah. I really hope you'll enjoy the aspects of about how Chicago was built as well, because it's just a very important city to me, and I want you to love it as much as I love Chicago. Yeah, I think this will just be like a great book to get outside your comfort zone, read some nonfiction.
You mentioned serial killers, and honestly, like, I'm there.
Skip through the architecture chapters, just like, where's H.H. Holmes? Wow, we did it!
We finally got through to the end.
I feel like we've been filming this video for 20 years. The camera stopped running like 3 times. It's now 11 o'clock. We started filming this at like 9. That was a doozy.
Oh my god.
On that note,
Thanks for joining
bye.
us.